Play Chess and Twitch TV, Kingscrusher. I'll be going over a couple of my own over-the-board games. Just cut out the... got an echo here. Just cut out the echo. Pardon me. Okay. So yeah, this week I thought I'd go over a couple of over-the-board games recently, which closed the season for me. So they're both in the North Circular Chess League, which is a chess league in North London, England. And in fact, just last night there was a very entertaining 5-minute chess tournament I played in. 6 rounds, 2 games each against your 6 different opponents. I scored reasonably well, 7.5 ahead of Paul Georgie and Alex, a couple of my good friends, but there were 3 IMs actually last night, which made it very, very difficult to do any better than that. So anyway, it was fun last night in the North Circular League. This is one of the longer time control games, not a 5-minute game. This is and it was Barnett playing away, and okay, I was playing Ian Hunnable, who I drew with earlier in the season. And I'll flip the board here. Okay, so Ian played knight f3. In my previous encounter, he was very well prepared for my Leningrad Dutch defense, like well into the game, and actually I ended up in this simplified endgame, and we agreed a draw. So I thought, okay, I'll try and play King's Indian instead of Leningrad Dutch this time in this encounter. So I played knight f6. High player in the game. Yeah, it was. I tried for a King's Indian, d4, g6, but now he surprised me with not c4 but knight c3. So he's forcing me to play Perk defense Pietz. So bishop g7, e4. I don't mind. I've studied the Perk a little bit in the past. d6. Okay, and now a little bit of a surprise. He played bishop g5 here. I'm not entirely sure. This is quite provocative to play bishop g5 in this position. If we just put that back for a moment, I think white could, for example, just play h3 just to stop any bishop g4s, and then bishop e2, and then just castle, and maybe bishop e3 later, knowing that knight g4 has been ruled out. But bishop g5 is provocative because it is providing black with a potential useful forcing move here, which I used, h6. Okay, so where does this bishop want to go back? When I checked out the theory of this on Chess Games Opening Explorer, bishop usually sort of drops back here, I think, or here. But actually he moved it to h4. Not too many games of bishop h4. Okay, and now I decide, well, I can go for this dark square bishop. And actually, to be honest with you, I wanted to say something more than just this game tonight. Of course, you can go over thousands and thousands of games. I actually had a philosophy here in this game I wanted to test. In an earlier game in the North Circular League, which I want to show you after this game, it was I learnt a painful lesson that I was trying to prepare for forcing moves. I was looking with a great tactical emphasis in a game prior to this, and I was a bit wary of that emphasis, of trying to play too forcefully, too tactically. Nevertheless, here it's presented to consider g5 and knight h5 if I want to win this bishop. But I wanted to sort of see more than tactics in this game. I wanted to try and use this double-edged sword concept to see, well, what is the side effects of winning that bishop? Well, obviously, if I win the bishop and I take on g3, well, let's follow through. g5 was played, bishop g3. I play knight h5. So I need to calculate knight takes g5 doesn't work. I can just recapture and protect the knight there, if nothing else. In fact, It's ridiculous. Knight g5, knight takes g3 as well. The bishop's also protecting the rook. So knight g5 is definitely not on, and this actually has been played before, and I think black won in a high level game with knight h5. I don't think this position should present black with too many problems, but I wanted to see more than just the tactical emphasis in this game. I wanted to see this double-edged sword concept. So, but basically, I want to put a positional angle to any calculations here, and not just look at forcing moves. Okay, he plays bishop c4, and there is already a positional angle presented here that I can use a forcing move to kind of add more weight of pressure to d4. If I play knight c6, I'll be pressurizing d4. So g4 serves a kind of strategic central control purpose here, but it looks also as though I'm weakening a lot of squares here. You know, the light square in particular, if a knight ever went there, but it's a long way away for white to try and exploit the weaknesses here. So I presumed that g4 was safe enough in this position, even though I wasn't set out to sort of play too tactically. I'm presented here with a tactical opportunity to force things along with the move g4 and knight c6. It does seem logical, you know, central control, adding a lot of central pressure. So I'm tempted with g4, and I go for it. g4. He plays knight h4 actually, and okay, d4. It does look as though, you know, knight c6. What is he going to do? If he closes, I thought, well, knight e5. That can't be too bad. So I play knight c6. Let's look at the position here. If d5, you know, I don't think this is too bad. Knight e5. And he's closing in his bishop here. Pardon me. If he plays d5, he's closing in his bishop on c4, and yeah, I think there shouldn't be too many problems there. So he plays actually knight f5, which is a bit trickier, and it's like, you know, he's got an attack on g4 planned, and it's got all of a sudden very, very tactical. I thought, what is actually going on here now? I take on f5, he recaptures, and I'm a bit wary here of playing knight takes d4, because maybe queen takes g4, for example. You know, this queen takes g4 looks to be a nuisance, but I thought, hold on a sec, couldn't I just take on g3 first? And as I say, I didn't really go out my way in this game to want to calculate lots of variations to make it a calculating contest. I didn't, but we have a very sharp position here, and it's about to get even more sharp here. It's about to get razor sharp, because after knight takes g3, he didn't routinely like recapture here. He plays queen takes g4. And I showed this position to Paul Georgiou and Thomas Rendell last night. I think Thomas Rendell assumed it was a 5-minute game in an earlier round, but no, it was a club match game. So the question is here, what does black do here? What would you do with black? And this is very interesting, because I didn't really calculate that much. I chose a continuation, which I think you know, Karpov maybe in his heyday would consider a clear continuation versus an unclear continuation. So if I gave you 20 seconds to have a look at this position, white's just played queen takes g4, so double attacking these pieces. What would you play here with black? So if I give you 20 seconds starting from now. Oh, pardon me. Any ideas? Okay, let's explore anyway. Okay, there is an idea. Okay, so the obvious one is knight takes h1. I didn't really calculate this. I'll tell you what I looked at. On knight takes h1, queen takes g7, and he's double attacking, the rook and f7. So rook f8, and I kind of didn't really know what was going on here, but I assumed, for example, castling queenside, that I might be getting in some sort of trouble. It looks a little bit materialistic. I wasn't quite sure what he had planned. It turns out on engine analysis of this position that if I had played this, which I didn't, there is actually a resource here for white, which apparently is good enough for white to draw, which is bishop takes f7 check. So if the king moves, then bishop e6. That's out of the question. And if rook takes, then check. And this is a bit unpleasant for perpetual possibilities. If the king tries to escape queen e6. I hadn't actually seen this. What I had considered, and this is the double-edged sword concept I wanted to try and experiment with. What I actually considered here was a comparison of positions that I gain material in this line. I've gobbled up a bishop and a rook. I've gained material on one end of the double-edged sword, but I can't really exactly identify what white has. I didn't calculate it that much. And I found in this position actually there's another move which is mentioned. My cheese, well done. For predicting what I played. I actually played knight takes f5. And here I saw both sides of the double-edged sword, and I thought, okay, I'm getting a pawn temporarily. I'm protecting the bishop, so I'm encouraging queen takes f5. And I saw this position as much clearer, because surely I've got my kind of central pressure. I'm going to win d4. And to be honest, I kind of overlooked this next move that he plays here. I was expecting, I didn't expect this next move. But it's entirely logical. Queen b5, just pinning the knight. Okay, I wasn't calculating that much. So here it seems as though it might not be attractive to take on d4 now, because a queen takes b7, for example. So queen takes b7, and it's not that attractive. Okay, so I'm not getting any material. So I haven't been greedy. On the other hand, the queen doesn't look as though. This doesn't look as though, in principle, it's a successful opening for white, because this bishop has been blunted with this structure. I seem to have more pawns in the centre. So if you were to evaluate this position, positionally, it seems I've got a comfortable position. And in fact, I can just castle here, which is what I did. I just castled. And I was very happy with this position. What is he doing about the pressure on d4 now? This is simply uncomfortable, and this is what I mean. I just thought this continuation, even missing queen b5, was a lot clearer than the gobbling continuation. So in the gobbling continuation, I saw what I got, obviously material, but I wasn't quite sure I could identify what the opponent had, and that was about doing detailed calculation. And that is actually a trait which, if you look at GM games recently, sometimes you'll see they don't play the sharpest move. They play a move which gives them a secure, sort of small advantage. So I felt a bit like that here, that, okay, this is much safer than the other continuation in many respects. And what is White actually doing here? He plays actually knight e2, giving up the d4 pawn now. And I thought, well, I have to take it now. Surely I have to take. And whatever the consequences are, there can't be too many consequences, because he hasn't got too many attacking bits around my king here. My king seems quite safe. So I take on d4. Okay. Knight takes d4. Bishop takes d4. Pawn up. What's going on here? He plays c3. And I have to decide here, do I really want to give up b7? So if I put the bishop back on g7 here, maybe, you know, he just takes on b7. And the queen might be heading back over here. Well, this doesn't seem, you know, that convincing with rook b8. Or he could consider maybe taking on here. But again, you know, this looks as though it should be okay for me. But I thought, well, I don't want to give him that b7 pawn. And actually, I played bishop b6 because I thought the bishop actually usefully eyes f2. And furthermore, I thought if he routinely castles here, I think, you know, I thought I had queen g5 using the h6 pawn, and that looks very nice for me. And even though it's opposite colour bishops, I've got more pawns in the centre here. Okay, but no, he presented a problem here with his king in the centre. He played queen h5 just attacking h6, and I play queen g5 anyway, and he doesn't want an exchange of queens. He plays queen h3. Okay, can you guess what I played in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Okay. Well, the first thought that came in mind during the game was queen f4, just to attack, you know, c4 and f2. But here, can you see the resource that white would have in this position if I'd played queen f4? It's a simple one. White would have here queen g3 check. So that would parry that. But fortunately, I saw bishop takes f2, same idea, but just running with check. So king takes f2, queen f4 check. No time for queen g3. King e1, queen takes c4. So I'm 2 pawns up temporarily, but he's going to take my h6 pawn now. Okay, but I've got my centre pawns here. He's got a passed h pawn in theory, and you know, maybe some dangers for my king potentially. But his king, his castling rights, looks a bit dodgy, I thought. Check, king f1, queen g6. I don't mind the exchange of queens here. You know, if he takes the queens off here, I thought I should be able to be okay here with, you know, these centre pawns. This looks okay. I can even grab another pawn to the centre if he ever takes. And I don't think I thought my central pawn majority here would outweigh the passed h pawn in this ending. So, for example, say this is an example. I thought, you know, this kind of position looks very comfortable if I can get my centre pawns going. You can see there's a central flood coming up. So I didn't mind that continuation. So the exchanging of queens, but actually, you know, he didn't want that either particularly. So he played queen h3, and I played f5, and he plays rook e1, and I play e5, and then he plays queen d3, which introduces, you know, maybe a check to win c7. And if I'm too casual here, this looks a bit tricky. For example, if I play rook f7, then rook e3 now threatens rook g3. That's a bit embarrassing because I've got no f4 because I'll lose my queen. And so I thought I did actually play It Seems a Good Move when I did an engine post-mortem of this game. Can you see what black, if black is faced with rook e3 to g3, pardon me, rook e3 to g3, can you see what I played in this position? I thought it was one of the good moves. So there's a potential danger to sort out here for c7, and there's also some rook lifting which needs to be factored in. My king, isn't that safe, but nor is his. But can you see what I played? It's a very simple move actually I played. The principal threat I wanted to cover in this position was actually rook e3 to g3. So that's my clue to you. What would you play here with black? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. Okay, on stream, yeah. Okay, there's some suggestions. Oh, there's Queen e6, a suggestion here from JRobot666. Queen e6, I just think it's starting to be a bit shaky. If I played Queen e6, what if h4? And all of a sudden, he's got these threats coming in like this. And it's not that incredibly... It's a bit worrisome. But it's probably not a big deal. Maybe Queen e6 is good as well. I played actually King g7 because I wanted to be able to answer rook e3 with f4, so with the queen protected by the king, just to hold that g3 square. And on engine post-mortem, the engine seems to like King g7 as well. So I was very happy with this position. I just want to say, I just want to re-emphasize again though, the point of one of the main points I wanted to show about this game was the earlier tactical opportunity where I turned down material because I saw both sides of the equation more clearly, and so I didn't regret having this position. So even though it's not big material gains, I have got this central kind of pawn majority, and my rooks are also more comfortable than white's rooks. Okay, so he plays h4, and now I offer the exchange of queens. He plays queen c4, attacking c7, and there's also a latent threat here of this kind of thing. So I wonder, what would you do here in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? What would you play here as black? Okay. You see, rook f7 might run into h5. I mean, it might not be that comfortable after h5. Then there's h6 check after, and there might even be, something like this after if the queen's not going g4. And for example, check here. I can't. My king's now protecting the rook. So what's going on here? This could be a disaster. Maybe h8 check here, and this could be a total disaster because I'm losing like f7. Yeah. So the simple move rook f7, even though it looks as though black shouldn't have any problems, white's got these potentially lethal forcing moves on rook f7 potentially. Now the problem is here that f3, okay, is casually suggested by some of you. But it needs careful calculation because my king is on this G file, yeah. And as soon as I activate this rook, am I asking for trouble? Well, I did play F3, and I was kind of excited by the possibilities here. I'm hoping they're sound. I think I checked this briefly with postmortem. So the possibilities after taking, let's have a look. If he took, rook takes f3 check, and let's go with king e2, there's not much else. What would you play here with black? If I give you 20 seconds in this position, what would you play here with black? My king looks a bit airy on the g file, I'd just like to say that. So if you had this position, what would you play? 20 seconds starting from now. Okay, yeah, this is where I started looking at forcing moves as a solution if I had this position, which I didn't occur. But you have to start looking at forcing moves here because I'm about to be slaughtered as well. The rooks are now connecting, hello. They're talking to each other. My rooks are out of joint at the moment, apart from the F file, but I'm going to be about to be skewered here if I'm not careful. I have to calculate queen c2 check. And I was convinced this worked during the game. I was convinced. So let's have a look. King takes, check. Where can the king go? If the king goes here, check. This looks like slaughter time. Maybe check here? Mate. That looks quite convincing. And also, what about king e3? Well, I thought there was queen f2 as a resource. King d3, there's rook f2. f3. Or is that? Hang on. Is this the position? I think so. King e4. Well, there's check winning the queen if nothing else. And I can win the queen quite cheaply. There might even be better here. Before I put foot in mouth, there might be better. But if we can just win the queen quite cheaply without even taking that with c6 check, that should be good enough as well. So is that... Okay, so... Someone's saying king e3 is the safest. That is still losing, isn't it? Check. We go with check. Where do you want to move the king? I think it's still losing. The king's driven to e4. We've got rook f4. We can win this queen. That can't be too hot. And there's nothing there. Okay. So I was happy with f3. That needed this kind of preparation for the forcing moves coming up to be able to play f3 in this position. And I think he was worried about that, and played g4. And what did I play here? It's the final move of the game. What do you think I played in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. Okay, it might be tempting to somebody to play f2, but then, I thought, rook e2. Actually, rook e2 is probably losing, actually, as well. Because actually, check, you can imagine check here winning in this position. This kind of thing seems winning. But maybe white's got better than rook e2. If rook d1, for example, then what happens here? So actually I played what I thought was really, really crushing, queen c2, as many of you mentioned here. Fibber, cannoli, cheese, triple pawns, queen c2, threatening queen g2. And the punchline here is that if rook g1, then, I hope you've seen this, what would black play here? He didn't play rook g1. what would you play here with black? If I give you 20 seconds here. Okay, F2, I believe is crunching, because this check is harmless. You know, Rook F7. There's no other checks. So, yeah, he resigned here, and it's the first game I've ever played in my life with this idea of the double-edged sword concept. Funny enough, I wanted to consciously inspect. If I was thinking strategically, to consciously inspect the other side of the coin of that, tactical, and vice versa, or whatever I was doing, I wanted to see both sides of the equation. And so it's difficult to illustrate that, but the key point where something was missing, if we go back in this game, from both sides of the equation, it was simply that it was missing, that I didn't know what was going on here. In this position after knight takes h1, but I was very, very pleased, obviously in retrospect, to have played knight takes f5. But I know I'm gaining material here, but during the game, you know, I didn't know what I was actually letting myself in for with this with knight takes h1. So I was very, very pleased by the game outcome, and I thoroughly enjoyed you know, thinking during this game. I enjoyed this game probably more than many other over-the-board games recently, in fact. You know, if you were to write a computer chess program, a computer would follow your program, and without question, the computers follow programs. And, you know, sometimes maybe, you know, we're thinking in a certain way, we have a certain bias, a generalization, and it sort of become a slave to it, so you don't really question it. And that takes away the fun. If you're following generalizations, you know, I've got to put my pieces in the center, maybe I've got to go after the king. You're following a kind of program yourself, but it's nice to be able to see both sides of the coin. Whatever you're thinking about, see both sides of the coin. So we're about halfway here, and the prelude to this game, and I'm sure when I put this on YouTube, it's nice to put my worst game after, because I think 50% of you would now have dropped off this video at the end of this game, which is good, because I didn't really want to show my next game, but it was a prelude to this game in the same league. I was obsessed before, earlier in the season, with the idea of preparing for forcing moves. I'd somehow arrived at this conclusion earlier in the season that, well, there was a win in the Middlesex League which convinced me I could play tactically. I could just think tactically. I thought most games I'm winning tactically with forcing moves. And this was the prelude to this game, where I kind of really enjoyed this game, trying more holistic thinking. But in the game I'm about to show you, there's a huge contrast reflected concretely in more materialism and more searching to do calculations straight from the opening. And I was convinced that you know, I was convinced that a lot of my club games in previous seasons were actually where I didn't see properly all the forcing sequences. And I think that what you get there with an obsession for a particular idea is a single-edged sword. You see tactics at the expense of everything else. And in fact, I saw a question in a forum, on the English Chess Forum earlier, about, oh, I've been doing all these puzzles on chess tempo and I'm not really improving my game. And that's an example of kind of single-edged sword obsession, that if you become convinced with a particular aspect of chess as giving you results, you get a single-edged sword. You're only seeing tactics and forcing moves as great priority, but there's these other aspects of the game, you know, positional evaluation, which, you know, you can lose to all the time. And so this horrific next game, which I have to show you in fairness, is a prelude to this game earlier in Middlesex League against Wood Green Chess Club. So here, it was against David Cutmore, one of the Cutmore brothers. I think both accountants. Anyway, so Cutmore I've played a few times in the past, and actually earlier in our league encounter earlier to this game, I actually won our first game. The clubs in this league play each other twice, and David Cutmore's around the same ECF rating as me, about 183 ECF. He's about there. So he played D4. So I have an obsession because I'd had a nice win, or what I thought was a nice win, against someone called Chin in the Middlesex League. And in that game I played very tactically, so I thought I'm going to play tactically in this game. I'm going to look at all the forcing moves. I'm going to make sure I see more forcing sequences as really high priority. And unfortunately, and this has happened before, unfortunately I was also reading this Benoni game of Tau from this ebook I'd downloaded earlier that day, and Tau was playing with the Benoni. The Benoni is a little bit structurally suspect, but I thought in memory of Tau, respect to Tau, I'll try and play Benoni. So C4, I played C5, and I'm not really a Benoni specialist, okay, but it's a relative of the King's Engine. And in fact, in my ebook, Tau have been referring to this kind of Benoni as a King's Engine, which was interesting. Okay, so D5, E6, Knight C3. I play E takes D5, C takes D5, D6, and in Tau's annotations, you know, at the time of around 1960, you know, the problem for black in this structure is that knight comes to C4 and harasses the D6 pawn. But Tau had considered that these dynamic pawn structures give the player using them these subtle resources, and you know, more specifically, your potential for creating forcing sequences is increasing. You know, you've got forcing pressure, you've got this majority here, 3-2. You've got pressure on the E file, you've got E5 as a square, the dark squares are a bit weakened. You've got dynamic compensation in this structure. But the Benoni's out of fashion. Not many GMs nowadays use the Benoni. Fischer used it in a 1972 match. He won a fantastic game with very, very dynamic pawn structure in the Benoni. Anyway, so knight F3, G6, and the knight comes to D2. So the dreaded knight C4 plan to harass this poor D6 pawn. Okay, and I thought, okay, I'm going to really analyse this like my Chin game. I'm going to make sure I play as, you know, tactically as possible. I'm going to look at all the forcing lines. So knight BD7. I thought, well, I can answer then knight C4 with knight B6. And I think Tau had noted a similar thing in one of his, in this Benoni thing I've been reading earlier in the day. So knight C4, knight B6, evicting the knight. He doesn't really want to take that. He goes to E3. Okay. Now here, I mean, it's an interesting position here. What has happened here? One thing in terms of forcing moves that I was a bit scared of was A4 and A5, and I considered that if I reacted with A5 I'd be weakening B5, and that might be a major big deal. But that's actually a little bit controversial, because how can white actually exploit B5? Is that really an exploitable weakness? So for some reason I was concerned, greatly concerned about A4, A5 here. Now let's see, I mean, what would you play in this position? Would you be really that concerned? Just to give you a little bit more insight on what I'm talking about, say bishop G7, A4, and you play A5, is that such a big deal? If that is the case, I mean, what would you play here? If you had the black pieces in this position, if I gave you 20 seconds here, what would you play in this position? Would you play bishop G7, or would you play something else? Well, I went crazy because I'm obsessed with the forcing moves, as I say, in this game. I thought A4, A5, I've got to stop all this. And in fact, I can play an active, aggressive move, Knight G4. Actually, it's against principle because I'm kind of against principle. My king's in the centre here, and I'm also unlocking this bishop. This E pawn is potentially liberated. So, okay, but I do kind of remove this Knight C4 possibility. And unfortunately, in my book that I've been reading, my ebook, Tal was saying about the strategic battle against the knight on C4, and it's like a villain, this knight on C4, and you've got to get rid of it if there's an opportunity. Sometimes I get biased by games. Unfortunately, I think when I've got a club game, I think that day and the day before, I don't think I should look at any other games. I tend to create information or ideas totally out of context with any over-the-board game I'm about to play that day. I've had this before. I've saw this Kramnik Kasparov game. He castled queenside, and it was a brilliancy against Kasparov, and I castled queenside and I get smashed later on in the day. On the day of an over-the-board game, I think I should avoid looking at any brilliant games, and in fact reading anything about chess, because when you're in your own positions, I don't think you should be heavily biased by some game you've just seen. So anyway, I thought this was a solution to this Knight C4 issue. So he takes, I take. And I'm pinning that, and if he plays F3, isn't he just weakening these dark squares? If he plays F3, and if he plays H3, then big deal, surely. Well, he plays Bishop F4. Okay, he plays Bishop F4, so he's still eyeing my D6. I'm not too bothered about that. I played Bishop G7. Okay. He plays H3. And here, this is forcing move obsession. What would you play here as black? Now, I've got a forcing move obsession, so that's the clue. If you've got a forcing move obsession, okay, so basically an emphasis on calculation, which is often turns into an emphasis on material and keeping things materially intact at the expense of all the other elements in the chess position. So if you were that way inclined, what would you play in this position, which is a seemingly sharp, aggressive move with tactical justification? So there's probably a tactical move and a positional move. Okay, I played Bishop F5 thinking, well, no, he can't play E4. I've got all the forcing moves sussed here. If he plays E4, which is what he did, hang on, I just played Bishop takes C3 check. And I'm winning material. I'm winning that centre pawn. B takes, Bishop takes E4. Let's evaluate this position. I've gained material. Yeah, for sure I've gained material. What have I damaged in my position here? I've damaged quite a bit. I've damaged my dark square control. I've lost this dark square protector. I've won this pawn. And yes, tactically it might be justified that Queen E2 doesn't work because I can simply castle here. Okay, there's a tactical justification. Sure, I've won this centre pawn. But my dark squares, and he plays actually Bishop B5 check. And my rooks are not really saying hello to each other here. I play King F8 and now check, and this looks awful now. For just the pawn, so I've been greedy, I've been materialistic. And the basis for that was this obsession with trying to prepare for forcing moves. So I have this miserable position here after castling. So he's got the bishop pair. I've got bad coordination of rooks. But what about this D5 pawn? And isn't this bishop prone to being trapped, to Queen F6 and G5? So I don't think it was that bad at the time of the game still. Sorry, there's another aspect of this which is interesting. Sorry, I'm simplifying it a bit. You know, sometimes you see Stephen King films on TV and they're nothing like the book. I'm simplifying it a bit. If I just want to step back into a little bit more detail, though, I'm giving you a bit of a gross simplification of something. I was trying to prepare for forcing moves, but I was also excited by the concept of preparation generally. And I thought forcing moves in chess have this... the thing is, if you look back at some of the recent Super GM tournaments, say Kramnik's beautiful combination he had against Radjabov, once Radjabov, reached that position where this combination existed, he may as well have resigned. There's nothing you can do if you're about to be hit with forcing moves. And I thought one of the great things about preparing for things is, you're giving yourself chance in advance to rescue yourself before it's too late. And I had many examples of this, preparation in chess. Like puzzles of the day on Chessboard. If you don't prepare them in advance, there's flaws in them, and it's embarrassing. It's too late on the day to change it. So in chess, you're going through a chess game, and the things you can't really do something about when they happen is being hit with a load of forcing moves. And this added to my conviction in this game that if I could just prepare for forcing moves, it'll be brilliant. I could not get into positions where I'm being blown away by a tactical combination. The problem is, what have I done to my position? This is still a single-edged sword. To me, this is now a single-edged sword because really, I've damaged my positioning. The proof might not be immediately apparent, but visually, this rook's kind of blocked in. The rooks are not talking to each other. White's got the bishop pair. Okay, but tactically, I'm looking also, to this kind of thing. So I play Queen F6. So he has to stop G5, it seems, and he does so. He plays Queen D2. And again, I've got a greedy tendency here, which goes in a ridiculous extreme. Maybe the position might not be completely and utterly lost, but it's starting to look like I'm a computer from 1980 or something at the moment, and even worse now. So guess what I played in this position? I'm pretty sure there might be sensible moves to minimise the damage here, the positional damage. But guess what I played? I got really greedy. Okay, I played knight takes d5. And in fact, during the game, I thought, hang on, what if he just plays f3? I thought f3 is just winning on the spot. What have I just done? I thought, no, what have I done? What have I done? Because knight takes c3, he's got f takes. He's attacking my queen. This is not working. And to some relief, he just ignored that f3. He didn't see it at all. He just played rook ac1. But I'm still got a really damaged positioning. I'm 2 pawns up, but quite damaged. And he plays after knight c7. I thought, hang on, I'm getting away with this. I'm getting away with murder now. I'm giving my bishop a retreat. His bishop's going to go somewhere. I'm going to get away with murder. I'm going to be 2 pawns up. He plays bishop d7 though. And still, my rooks are not talking to each other here. But I thought, well, I've got a pawn sack. I can sack a pawn to maybe get some g-file to get this rook out. I can play g5 as a pawn sack. He's controlling e8 with this move. And if rook d8, he's got bishop g5. He's setting a little trap. Rook d8, bishop g5. But I thought, okay, I can return some material here. And if I return some material, I'm restoring part of the equation of chess. Material versus quality versus time. Exparov material, quality, time. If I give that material, but he's got the bishop pair. I can't get hold of his bishop pair. I've only got bishop and knight. How is the bishop pair dangerous here? And he's got the rooks talking to each other quicker than my rooks. But I play g5 anyway. Bishop takes g5. I'm happy with that because I'm looking forward to now. This kind of, it looks as though I've got things coordinated. f3. Now in this position, again, this might not actually be too terrible. This position objectively, because it looks as though I might have. Actually, it looks as though Bishop C6, for example, might be possible. But I was attracted with this forcing move here, Bishop D3. The advantage of keeping the bishop on this diagonal is, as he pointed out, that maybe H6 and then Bishop takes F3 at some point might be handy. Sorry, the bishop's hanging here anyway. No, anyway, I played Bishop D3, Rook Fe1, and he's got fast infiltration on E7 here, and he's still got the bishop pair. And this is an uncomfortable position. So this game looks like greed compared to the game I showed you earlier, which was a later game. And see, this looks like greed, and the other game more conservative. But the greed was fed by this obsession with preparing for forcing moves. And that conviction for forcing moves was seeing lots of Grandmaster games recently where, I thought, well, once you get a position where there's a combination, you've had it. So this idea of looking in advance for them is cool, but that actually breeds materialism. So I play H6, okay, Bishop H4. I am in difficulties because he's got a lot of piece coordination here, and the control of E8. The bishop pair is actually doing a fine job on these two squares, and the infiltration E7. He plays I play C4 to lock down C4 from white because I don't want frontal pressure on D6. So I'm playing C4, and now he plays a very, very powerful move in this position. Because I'm looking forward to stuff like this to get pressure again on G2. But he plays a very, very powerful move. Can you guess what white played here? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. So white's played very, very powerful move, really. I'll give you a clue. It uses the bishop makes use of the bishop on. It's not a bishop move, but it makes use of the bishop on D7. See, there's an element in this position here. You see, it seems like a fantasy that black's going to use the G file here and be okay and be a pawn up. It seems like a fantasy now to me when looking at this position. White's bishop pair, look at these bishops. That's beyond calculation. The beauty of the bishop pair, you can't really calculate their consequences. You know that they're controlling lots of squares. You know that there's a potential infiltration point. But he plays actually F4, and it's not really giving much time to kind of play King H7 now. I play King H7, but he plays F5. Where's my queen going? I thought I've got things under control, sort of, because I thought, well, I play a forcing move here, and I was expecting Queen F4, but no, he doesn't play Queen F4. Doesn't play Queen F4, and my queen is starting to run out of squares now. Actually, what does he play in this position? What does white play in this position? Okay, the horror is revealed to me. Queen F2, and he's simply threatening G4, winning my queen. Threatening G4, winning my queen. And I can't really do much about this. So much for my G file. It's these bishops are controlling everything. The rook's, threatening to come to E7. It's awful now. If I play f6, then, you know, rook e7 check. Ouch. I play rook hg8. So why didn't I take the pawn with the bishop? Was that a question? Why didn't I take the pawn with the bishop? Let's have a quick look. I think I didn't want to lose d6. He smashes me with, sorry, queen takes d6. He's crashing through to e7. I didn't think it looked that pretty. Knight e6. Probably better than the game continuation though. No, rook f1 doesn't look that hot still. Queen g6. It might be rook f6. I mean, it starts to look potentially horrendous on f7. Yeah. But yeah, probably that might be the best in the circumstances to take that pawn. I think I was expecting queen f4, so I'm starting to miscalculate anyway. But you know, he dominates the position now with queen f2 threatening g4. So I didn't realise my queen was going to be trapped. So rook hg8, and just king h2 now. You know, with the threat of g4. So I play the desperate f6 to try and give my queen an escape, but check. Rook g7, and now a very, very powerful move, because I was hoping here forcing moves could still save me, but guess what white plays in this position? Very, very strong move, which I think the engine, when I engine checked this game, I think the engine came up with it as well. What would you play here with white? Very good move. So white to play here. Okay, what he didn't play was g4, because I think that might give me hope with rook takes e7. You know, I've got rook e2. But no, white doesn't have to do that. You know, white just plays rook ce1, still keeping the threat of g4. And it's over. It's over. I play knight d5, just a few more moves. I give up my queen here, but it's hopeless. It's over. After bishop e8, he's coming into g6 as well. I resign. So, very, very greedy game for me there as a prelude to that first game. And I was convinced, I was absolutely convinced, you could go into an over-the-board game and just think about all the forcing moves in advance. But my conclusion is it might be a little bit materialistic. And you need this double-edged sword concept, I think. You've got to keep evaluating the positions, you know. It's beyond... Chess is more complex than forcing moves. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week. So there were two key games there, and you know, I think I like this idea that whatever strategy you use, try and see its downsides. Really, I think that's the key point for me. I'm hoping next season I'll enjoy the games more. That's the important thing as well. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll put this up on YouTube. And, you know, double-edged sword concept. I think it was great fun, the latter game, and recent 5-minute games I've been playing with this idea. Chess is very, very complex, multifaceted, so you can't be obsessed with a single aspect. Okay, so next Tuesday probably is the next show, yeah. So see you then. Thanks very much. Comments or questions on YouTube.